My sister facilitated my estrangement by informing our parents that I am a transgender woman. Consequently, they expelled me from the family home. During my wedding, my father messaged me, addressing me as Emma. Reflecting on this, it is astonishing to realize that a year ago, the prospect of my family rejecting me would have been met with laughter. However, that is precisely what transpired. The narrative began with my half-sister, Leah. Leah has always had a flair for drama, but I never anticipated that one of her lies would unravel my life. Leah was the type who required constant attention. Growing up, I endeavored to be a good big sister, despite our lack of closeness. Our father remarried when I was 10, and Leah was born a few years later. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. My father and stepmother, Margaret, adored her, and she knew how to exploit that to her advantage. Leah was adept at manipulation, but I was unaware of the extent to which she would take it. The subtle comments began with Leah expressing concerns to my parents about my behavior. She mentioned that I was acting strange and staying out late, which prompted my parents to worry about me. Initially, they dismissed these comments, considering me a 24-year-old adult navigating life post-college. However, Leah's persistent doubts slowly eroded my confidence, and I failed to recognize the impact until it was too late. One day, I received a call from my father. His voice was tense, and I could sense that something was amiss. "Emma, we need to talk," he said. "Can you come over?" I arrived at their house, unaware that my entire world was about to be shattered. Upon entering the living room, I found Margaret seated on the couch with her arms crossed, her expression suggesting she had already made up her mind about me. Leo was also present, appearing remarkably innocent given the circumstances. My father wasted no time. "Leah shared something with us, and I need you to be honest with us. Are you on drugs?" I laughed because it was so absurd. "What? No, of course not. Where is this coming from?" Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Leah claimed she found some pills in your room when you stayed over last weekend." I froze. Leah hadn't been in my room, or so I thought. I never left anything suspicious there. "That's not true. I don't know what she's talking about." But Leah, with her wide eyes and fake concern, piped in. I didn't want to say anything. "I've been deeply concerned about you, Emma. Your behavior has been quite unusual, and I thought perhaps you might need assistance." I stared at her, my mouth agape in disbelief. "You're lying?" "I've never done drugs in my life," but it didn't matter what I said. Leah had already implanted the lie firmly in their minds. Dad and Margaret exchanged a glance, and I could tell they believed her over me. It didn't matter that I had never given them any reason to doubt me before. "That's not all," Margaret added. "Leah also mentioned that you have been involved with questionable individuals. Emma, are you selling yourself?" I felt like I had been slapped by my own stepmother, who had raised me for years, accusing me of being a prostitute, all because of something Leah said. I couldn't believe it. "No, I can't believe you're even asking me that. Leah's lying." But again, my words didn't seem to matter. Leah had woven her web, and they were caught in it. Emma's father said, his voice softer now, like he wanted to believe me. "But couldn't we just want to help you? If you're in trouble, we need to know." "I'm not in trouble," I yelled, tears welling up in my eyes. Leah was pretending to be innocent, her wide eyes betraying her true intentions. "Emma, I'm just trying to help you. I don't want you to end up like some of my friends who got involved in bad things." I couldn't stand to look at her. "You're doing this on purpose," I spat. "You want them to hate me?" Margaret stood up. "That's enough, Emma. Until you can be honest with us, we cannot trust you. We love you, but we need to take a step back." This was their way of indicating that they no longer wanted her presence. That day, I left the house feeling numb. My own family, the people who were supposed to have my back, had turned against me because of Leah's lies. I didn't know what to do. I tried calling my mom, but she lived across the country, and while she believed me, there wasn't much she could do from so far away. The most distressing aspect was that Leah's lies continued to escalate. She began spreading rumors in town that I was a drug addict, which quickly gained traction. Consequently, I lost my job due to my employer's concerns about my reliability. My friends stopped calling, and I found myself increasingly isolated. Leah's deceitful actions stripped me of everything: my family, my career, and my reputation. I was spiraling downward, while she was thriving on the attention. Each time I attempted to confront her, she would manipulate the situation, portraying me as the unstable one. The final straw came when my father called me again, this time to inform me that they no longer wanted me to visit. Emma, until you can get help, it's best if you stay away. We can't have you around Leah. She's been through enough. I was the one who had lost everything, and yet Leah was the victim in their eyes. I was done. I packed up my things and moved to a new city, hoping to start over, but the damage had been done. My relationship with my family was shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. As time passed, I found myself unable to forgive them for their actions, particularly Leah's. However, I began to question the depth of her behavior. What kind of person lies so brutally, destroying someone's life? Was it merely jealousy, or was there something more complex at play? Regardless, I knew I had to move forward with my life, regardless of their presence or absence. A year has passed since everything fell apart, and while I have managed to rebuild some of what I lost, the pain of losing my family still lingers. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust them again, or if they'll ever see through Leah's lies, but one thing's for sure. If they ever want me back in their lives, they'll have to face the truth about who Leo really is. I'm not holding my breath after the confrontation with my family. Things only got worse. I tried to move on, but it wasn't that simple. The betrayal was a wound that festered, growing deeper with each passing day. Leah's lies had infected my life, and I couldn't escape the consequences. It wasn't just the loss of my job or friends, it was the loss of my identity. Everything I thought I knew about myself was questioned, and it all led back to my father kicking me out of the house. The memory of that fateful day remains vivid in my mind. I returned to my father's house, hoping to persuade him with a calm, face-to-face conversation. I believed that deep down, the father who raised me still existed within him. The father who used to cheer for me at soccer games, who taught me how to ride a bike, who always said family comes first. I wanted that version of my father back, but when I walked through the door, I immediately felt the tension in the air. Margaret was sitting in the kitchen, arms crossed, staring at me like I was something rotten that needed to be taken out. Leah, of course, was nowhere to be seen, but I knew she was around, probably listening from the shadows, waiting for things to fall apart like she always wanted. My father stood by the kitchen counter, his face stern like he'd already made up his mind before I even spoke a word. "Dad, we need to talk." I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "You have to hear my side of this." He didn't respond right away, and that silence was suffocating. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, pounding louder with each second that passed. Finally, he sighed. "I don't know if there's anything left to say, Emma. We've given you time, we've tried to help, but you haven't helped me." I shot back, my voice shaking. "Now you've only listened to Leah. Everything she's told you is a lie, and I can prove it. Please just listen to me." Margaret shook her head, and I could feel her judgment piercing through me. "Emma, we've heard enough. Leah's been nothing but concern for you, and you've done nothing to show us that she's wrong." The frustration boiled up inside me, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. Leo is lying because she's jealous. She's always wanted attention, and this is how she gets it. Don't you see? She's manipulating you. But my words fell on deaf ears. My father's expression didn't change. He wasn't even considering my side of the story. "Emma," he said, his voice low but firm, "this isn't healthy for you or for Leah. I think it's best if you don't come around anymore, at least until you get help." "Get help?" I repeated, incredulous. "You think I'm the one who needs help? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not on drugs. I'm not selling myself. Leah made it all up, and you're throwing me out because of her lies?" My father's gaze hardened. "We cannot allow negativity to persist within our home. I'm sorry, but I require your immediate departure." Margaret concurred, her lips set in a firm line. It was for the best. I stood there stunned. This was it. They were choosing Leah's lies over me, their own daughter. I felt like I was being erased, like everything I'd ever done for them. Every moment of love, every shared memory was being wiped away in an instant. I looked at my father one last time, hoping for some flicker of doubt, some sign that he might reconsider, but there was nothing. He was lost to me. I turned and left without another word, tears stinging my eyes as I slammed the door behind me. The sound echoed in my head, a final, cruel punctuation to the life I once knew. The initial months following my expulsion were a haze of despair. I sought refuge with a friend, Jessica, who generously allowed me to stay on her couch as I endeavored to rebuild my life. Despite my efforts to divert my attention, the memory of abandonment lingered, causing a pang in my chest whenever I encountered a family in the park or heard someone mention their parents. I couldn't help but dwell on Leah and the way she had alienated everyone I cared about. Jessica attempted to offer support, but it was evident that she did not fully comprehend the depth of my struggle. Perhaps you should consider reaching out to them again, she suggested one evening as we sat on her small balcony. Perhaps they have cooled down by now. You could. No, I interrupted, my voice bitter. They don't want me. They made that very clear. She looked at me sympathetically, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. I knew she wanted to help, but unless you've been through it, you can't really understand what it's like to have your family turn on you, to be betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. In the subsequent years, I endeavored to reconstruct my life, but the task proved arduous. The rumors Leah had circulated continued to haunt me, even in my new city. Job applications were met with rejections. Each one felt like a further blow to the person I once was. People regarded me with suspicion, as if I were damaged or untrustworthy. 2 years after my expulsion, an unexpected event occurred. On a Saturday afternoon, I was employed at a small cafe, having secured a stable job as a barista. Although it was not my ideal career, it provided financial stability. While wiping down the counter, a man entered. He appeared somewhat familiar, yet I struggled to identify him. Emma, he hesitated. I turned to him, intrigued. Yes, I responded, and he smiled awkwardly. You probably don't remember me. I'm Dylan. My stomach dropped at the mention of Leah's name. Dylan. Oh God, I remembered him now. He had dated Leah for a few years back when we were younger. They'd broken up right around the time Leah started spreading those rumors about me. What the hell was he doing here? I forced a polite smile, even though all I wanted to do was turn and walk away. Oh yeah, and what's up? He shifted uncomfortably, running a hand through his hair. I understand that this may seem unusual, but I have been contemplating this conversation for some time. Initially, I hesitated, but given the recent events, I felt compelled to seek clarity. I raised an eyebrow. Seeking clarity? He sighed, appearing genuinely remorseful. It's about Leah and the things she said about you, the drugs, the prostitution. It was all a lie. Hearing someone else say it, someone who knew Leo well, made it all the more real. I know that I said my voice colder than I intended, but my family doesn't. Dylan nodded, looking down at the floor. I know, and I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner, but I didn't realize how far she would take it. Leah harbored jealousy towards you, Emma, which I believe was the root of her actions. I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. Jealous of what? You, Dylan said. Simply, you were older, more independent, had your own life. Leah always felt like she was living in your shadow, even if you didn't notice. She craved attention, and when she realized she could get it by making you look bad, well, she ran with it. I didn't know the full extent of it at the time, but she admitted it to me after we broke up. She felt guilty, but she didn't know how to stop. My mind was reeling. Leah had confessed to fabricating everything, and Dylan had been aware of this for some time. Why didn't you inform me sooner? I demanded, anger bubbling up inside me. You could have prevented this. My family could have known the truth years ago. I'm sorry, Dylan repeated, his voice small. I didn't know how. I didn't think they would believe me. And Leah has a way of making people doubt themselves. She messed with my head, too. I shook my head, barely able to believe what I was hearing. After everything, after all the pain and heartache Leah had caused, it all boiled down to jealousy. That's why my father had kicked me out. That's why I had lost my family, my job, my entire life. Dylan stood there, awaiting my response, but I was speechless, unable to meet his gaze. All I felt was anger. You should go, I mumbled, turning away from him. Emma, I'm really sorry, he said one last time before quietly leaving the cafe. I stood there, gripping the counter, trying to steady myself as the weight of everything crashed down on me. Leah's deceit had irrevocably altered my life. all stemming from her jealousy. Now, years later, I finally possessed the truth, but what was its value? Following that day, I found myself unable to cease contemplating confronting Leah. The fury I harbored was unparalleled, keeping me awake at night, reliving each instance of betrayal. I sought answers. I desired for her to acknowledge her actions not only to me, but also to our father and to everyone. Years had passed since Dylan had confessed Leah's lies to me. Initially, I believed that the revelation would provide a sense of closure, but it only served to reopen old wounds. I had constructed my life independently of my family, without their support or love, and I did not require their apologies, especially not now. I was in a good place. For the first time in a long while, I had a new job. I loved working in marketing for a nonprofit. And more importantly, I had found someone who accepted me for who I was without the baggage of my past. Noah and I had met 2 years ago through mutual friends, and from the moment we started talking, everything felt easy. He didn't pry into my family life. He didn't judge me for the broken relationships. He just saw me as the person I had become. Despite everything, when Noah proposed, I felt like my life was finally coming together again. We were planning a small wedding, nothing extravagant. I didn't need a big celebration. What mattered was starting our new life together, building a family that wasn't poisoned by lies and betrayal. However, life was not as straightforward as it seemed. I had not spoken to my father or Margaret for years. Following my expulsion, I severed all connections, relocated to a different city, changed my phone number, and blocked them on social media. Occasionally, I would hear through the grapevine that they were inquiring about me, but I never responded. Even after Dylan's confession, I refrained from reaching out. What would I say? That they believed a lie over me, their own daughter, and that I had to suffer because of their blind trust in Leah? I couldn't forgive them for that. 6 months into our wedding planning, an unexpected email arrived. It was from my father. I hesitated for a moment before opening it, my heart racing as I read his words to Emma, I have thought of you every day since you left. I know we made a terrible mistake by believing Leah over you, and I cannot express how sorry I am for everything that has happened. Margaret, and I miss you more than words can say. We want to make things right. I heard through a friend that you are getting married. I would love to be there to walk you down the aisle like I always imagined. Please, Emma, give me a chance to show you how sorry I am. I put my phone down, my hands shaking. He wanted to apologize after all these years, after everything they had put me through. He wanted to make things right. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. No one noticed I was distracted and asked me what was going on, but I couldn't even find the words to explain. I hadn't told him the full story of what happened with my family. He knew they weren't part of my life, but he didn't know the extent of the betrayal. I had buried it so deep that it almost felt like another lifetime. One evening, I sat Noah down and shared with him everything about Leah, my father, and Margaret. I recounted how they had abandoned me in my time of need. I also mentioned Dylan's confession and my inability to forgive them despite the truth. Noah listened attentively, his expression thoughtful, but he did not urge me to make any decisions. He said, "You don't owe them anything. If you don't want them at the wedding, that's your choice. This is your day, Emma. It's about our future, not the past." His words provided me with comfort, yet they did not simplify the decision. Despite acknowledging that my family could never be the same, a part of me still yearned for the father I had lost. I longed for him to walk me down the aisle, to be present on one of the most significant days of my life. However, could I truly forgive them for their actions? A week later, I finally responded to my father's email. I acknowledged his apology, but I was not prepared to forgive and forget. The damage had been too extensive. However, if he wished to attend the wedding, I was willing to extend an invitation, provided he understood that our relationship would never revert to its previous state. I made it clear that Leah and Margaret would not be invited, as that was non-negotiable. 2 days after I sent that email, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to pick it up. Emma? My father's voice was shaky, filled with emotion. I didn't say anything at first. I just listened, waiting for him to speak. "I got your email," he said finally. "I'm so happy you're willing to let me come to the wedding, but I have to ask, are you really not going to invite Leah?" My stomach twisted. I knew where this was going. No, Dad, Leah isn't invited. You know why there was a long pause on the other end of the line? I could hear him breathing, trying to choose his next words carefully. Emma is your sister, and I understand that her actions were reprehensible. However, she is still family, and she has matured significantly since then. She expresses remorse for her actions and desires to make amends. This acknowledgement of her past transgressions ignited a sense of anger within me. Dad, Leah has destroyed my life with her lies, and you and Margaret believed her without question. She doesn't get to just show up at my wedding and pretend everything is okay. I understand that, but this is a chance for us to all be together again, to start healing as a family. I can't come to your wedding if Leah isn't there. It wouldn't be right. I froze an ultimatum. He was giving me an ultimatum on my wedding day. Invite the person who ruined my life, or he wouldn't come. Are you serious right now? I asked, my voice tight with disbelief. I am serious, Emma. I love you, and I want to support you, but I cannot abandon Leah. She is my daughter as well. I felt like I was going to be sick. You're really going to choose her over me again? I asked with my voice trembling with rage after everything that's happened. You're still taking her side. It's not about sides, he said desperately. It's about family. We need to come together. I said, my voice cold and firm. What we needed was for you to stand by me when I needed you didn't. And now, when I'm finally happy, you're trying to ruin it again. Emma, please don't do this, he begged. We can fix this. No, Dad, we can't. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. Tears filled my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't let him or Leah or anyone else take this day away from me. I had fought too hard to get here. The months leading up to the wedding were bittersweet. On one hand, I was marrying the love of my life. On the other, my father wasn't going to be there. I had made my decision, and I stood by it, but it still hurt. Deep down, I had hoped he would choose me, that he would finally see how much pain he had caused by siding with Leah all those years ago. But he didn't, he couldn't. I tried to focus on the good things, picking out flowers with my maid of honor, Rachel, finalizing the menu, choosing the perfect dress. Noah was supportive throughout the entire process, never once urging me to invite my father or Leah. He understood that this wedding was about us and our future, not the remnants of my past. Despite this, as the day approached, I couldn't help but feel the absence of my family weighing on me. I knew my mother couldn't make it. She lived across the country, and we weren't close anymore. She had tried to remain neutral during the entire ordeal with Leah, and while I didn't resent her for it, it created a distance between us that we never quite bridged. The night before my wedding, Rachel organized a small bachelorette party for me. It was a gathering of close friends, accompanied by ample wine and laughter. For a few hours, I was able to forget about everything and simply enjoy myself. However, as the party concluded and my friends departed, I found myself alone in my apartment, gazing at the invitation to my own wedding. Despite knowing my father would not attend, I had sent one to him. A part of me considered tearing it up, seeking to completely remove him from my life. Yet another part, perhaps the one that still yearned for the family I had lost, resisted that impulse. The wedding day arrived, and it was everything I had envisioned. The sun was shining, the air was warm, and as I stood at the altar with Noah, surrounded by our friends and chosen family, I felt at peace. I had made the right choice. My father wasn't there, neither was Leah, and for the first time, I didn't feel the weight of their absence. I didn't need them to validate my happiness, to prove that I had moved on. I had found my own happiness, my own family, and that was enough. As Noah and I exchanged our vows, I experienced a sense of closure, not stemming from forgiveness or reconciliation, but from the act of self-choosing. I realized that some wounds cannot be healed, and that is acceptable. Following the ceremony, as we danced beneath the stars, I felt a newfound freedom. For so long, I had carried the burden of my family's betrayal, allowing it to define me. But now, standing beside Noah, I realized that my past did not dictate my future. I had constructed a new life, one filled with love and trust, and nothing, not my father, not Leah, nor anyone else, could ever take that away from me. For the first time in years, I felt complete. The wedding day was perfect. Standing beside Noah at the altar, I experienced a profound sense of peace that I had not felt in years. It marked the commencement of a new chapter, one devoid of the betrayals, lies, and heartbreak that characterized my past. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe I could build a life free from the shadows of my family. However, upon returning from our brief honeymoon, reality set in. The weight of my decision to cut ties with my father, Margaret, and Leah hung over me. There had been no apology, no last-minute plea for forgiveness from them. I had made it clear by not inviting Leah and standing firm when my father issued his ultimatum that I was done. But the world doesn't simply stop when you make those decisions. People move on, and sometimes they spiral. Approximately 2 months following the wedding, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. Despite my initial reluctance to answer, the message left by Margaret, my sister-in-law, was urgent and alarming. "Emma, it's Margaret. Please call me back. It's Leah. She's in the hospital. She tried to hurt herself. Please, Emma, we need you." The gravity of the situation left me paralyzed. Leah had attempted suicide. The realization left me feeling nauseous. Leah, the sister who had devastated my life, lied about me, and fractured my family, was now in the hospital due to her attempt to end her life. A wave of guilt overwhelmed me, but I suppressed it. This was not my fault. Leah had made her own choices, and I was not accountable for them. Nevertheless, Margaret's plea for me to return to the situation I had worked so hard to escape was perplexing. I replayed the voicemail, attempting to discern the underlying emotions: desperation, fear, or guilt. I had not spoken to her since my departure, and now she was requesting my involvement in the turmoil I had endeavored to leave behind. Noah was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I mustered the courage to inform him about the voicemail from Margaret. I said, trying to maintain a neutral tone, "Leah is in the hospital. She tried to hurt herself." Noah looked up from the stove, his brow furrowed with concern. "What did she say? Is Leo okay?" I admitted that Margaret didn't provide many details, only mentioning that she was in the hospital and had asked me to come, sounding desperate. Noah wiped his hands on a towel and walked over to me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "What are you going to do?" I shrugged, unsure. I have spent years attempting to distance myself from the damage they have caused, but now it feels like I am being pulled back into it. I am uncertain if I can continue. Noah's voice was gentle yet firm. "Emma, you don't owe them anything. Leah made her choices, and your family made theirs. You're not responsible for what happened to her." His words resonated with my own thoughts, yet they did not make the decision any easier. A part of me, the part that still remembered Leah as the little girl I once tried to be a big sister to, felt an obligation. However, the rational part of me, the part that had rebuilt my life without their toxicity, knew I couldn't go back. That night, I lay awake, replaying the events that led us all to this point. The years of manipulation, the way my father had chosen her over me time and time again. Could I really walk back into their lives now, even with Leah in such a fragile state? What would that accomplish? I pondered the potential consequences of visiting the hospital. What would I say? Would they expect me to forgive Leah? To overlook all the pain because she was in a vulnerable state? And what if I didn't forgive her? What if I went and it made everything worse? The following morning, I made my decision. I would not return. Noah supported me, but I could sense his concern. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I don't want you to regret this later." I reassured him, and myself, I'm sure. I had spent too long trying to fix things that weren't my fault. I wasn't going to let them guilt me into coming back. So I didn't call Margaret back. I didn't go to the hospital. I stayed away, choosing the peace I had fought so hard for over the chaos my family always brought with them. A few weeks later, I received another voicemail from my father. It was the first time I had heard his voice since the ultimatum before the wedding. "Emma, it's Dad. I know you're probably angry, and I understand why, but Leah is in rehab now, and I think it would mean a lot to her if you visited. She's getting help. She's admitted to everything she did, and she's trying to make amends. I know it's a lot to ask, but maybe it's time to start healing as a family. Please think about it." I deleted the message without replying.
Leah was undergoing rehabilitation, admitting to her past actions, as my father informed me. However, I was wary of being ensnared once more in her manipulative web. Leah had been adept at controlling others for years, and while she was now seeking redemption, it did not alter the harm she had inflicted upon me. It did not mitigate the years of damage or the fact that my family had deserted me during my most vulnerable moments. In the weeks that followed, I received more messages. Margaret called several times, leaving long emotional voicemails about how Leo was improving and how they all wanted to be a family again. My father sent texts asking me to visit Leah at the rehab facility to give her a chance, but each time I ignored them. I had made my decision. 6 months after Leah's suicide attempt, I encountered Dylan unexpectedly. Noah and I were out for lunch on a sunny Saturday when I noticed him across the street. He saw me at the same time, and before I could avoid him, he was walking over. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said, sounding surprised. I forced a smile, feeling a wave of discomfort. I hadn't seen Dylan since he confessed Lee's lies to me years ago. Seeing him now, after everything, felt strange. "Just out with Noah," I replied, nodding towards my husband, who was watching us curiously from the cafe table. Dylan paused for a moment before speaking again. "I don't want to intrude, but have you heard about Leah?" I stiffened. "I've heard enough," he continued, ignoring the coldness in my voice. "She's in rehab," he continued. "She's really trying. Emma, I know she hurt you, but she's admitted to everything now. She's working through her issues." "Maybe Dylan." "Stop," I interrupted, my voice firmed. "I am glad she is receiving assistance, but it does not affect my perspective. I have moved on." Dylan observed me with a blend of empathy and sorrow in his eyes. "I understand, truly, but people can undergo transformation. Emily is attempting to seek reconciliation. However, I do not require her apologies. My patience is waning, and I feel I owe her nothing. I have endured years of suffering due to her deceit. I am not prepared to allow her back into my life merely because she feels remorseful." Dylan sighed, realizing he couldn't sway my decision. I nodded, signaling the end of the conversation, and thanked him for his honesty. He gave me a small, sad smile before walking away. "Noah, watch him go," he said, then turned to me. "Are you okay?" I nodded, although I wasn't entirely sure. Dylan had brought up old memories and pain, but I wasn't going to let it drag me back into that dark place. "I'm fine," I said, trying to shake off the encounter. "I just want to focus on us, on our life." As time passed, the communications from my father and Margaret became less frequent. Leah had completed her rehabilitation and seemed to be doing better, but I was indifferent. I had decided to sever ties with them permanently and had no intention of looking back. At times, late at night, I would ponder what my life would have been like if Leah had never told those lies. If my father had never believed her, would we still be a family? Would things have turned out differently? However, these thoughts were fleeting, and I always pushed them away. I had my own family now with Noah, and we were building a life together, one that was not tainted by the toxic dynamics of my past, and that was sufficient for me. Eventually, the calls ceased. My father and Margaret must have realized that I would not return, no matter how much they pleaded. Leah seemed to comprehend that she could not repair the damage she had caused, and I chose to move forward, leaving the past behind.